Good afternoon, everyone. Calling to order the meeting of the Buncombe County Board of Elections for Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. It is great to see a full house. Thank you all for coming in person today. Mr. Whitney, do we have anyone tuned in online? All right, for virtual participants, we stream every one of our meetings. We love the fact that you're here, but you don't have to come in if you don't want to. You can watch all of our meetings live. We stream them online. We also post recordings of our meetings if you are a real glutton for punishment. Anyway, without further ado, the first item is approval of the agenda. Colleagues, everyone have a chance to take a look at the agenda? All righty. I'm going to take a look at it myself. Okay, without objection, then we'll adopt this agenda for this meeting. And hearing none, the meeting agenda is adopted. The next thing up is the minutes from our August meeting. Everyone have a chance to take a look at those? They looked pretty good, except for that vacation plans thing. And right, the year of the minutes that we approved. July 9th, 2024, not 2024. If everyone's had a chance to take a look at the minutes, without objection, we'll approve the minutes of the meeting of August 13th. And hearing none, these minutes are approved. Thanks, everybody. The third item on today's agenda is office updates. Director Duncan.
Thank you. So I keep saying this, but this will be the longest update I have given so far. So we'll just keep with that trend. But we have a lot going on, and I want to make sure that the board is informed of everything, because I'm sure that you all are getting questions. So I want to make sure you have everything you need to feel prepared. Today in this meeting, we are going to be accomplishing a few things. So we'll go through these office updates. I have 11 of them. We have a MAT appointment. We had one person drop off, so we're doing a replacement. Early voting poll worker appointments. So last time we met, we did the initial presentation. So today is the appointment day. And then we have the board schedule update. So that because of law changes, there were a few meeting changes that we have to make to the schedule, and AK will go over those. So that's what we're doing today. And then we will go through office updates. And I want to go through these slowly and answer any questions as we go, because there may be some, but we'll be talking about the absentee ballot delay. You've all received emails. We'll talk about public records requests, poll worker training, the MOVE sticker contest, National Voter Registration Day. And then at the end, we'll give you an update on the budget. So kind of where we are on that process, because we're trying to do it really early so that we're ready for the county's side then, and Victoria will help me out with that. So I want to start with the absentee ballot delay, because that is a very hot topic right now. And so what happened there, just for everyone to make sure that we are all on the same page, is that We the People Party requested that the name of their nominees be taken from the ballot. The State Board of Elections said the deadline has passed, we can't do that. And then it went to the Wake County, the Wake Superior Court, and they had their order, and then the Supreme Court denied that order, and the State Board appealed it. So we've had a bunch of back and forth in the court. So where we are right now is that we will be pre-printing the ballots without the names of the We the People nominees. So that's where we are. We had already printed, and we meaning everyone in the state had already gotten their absentee ballots ready to send out on Friday. So we will have to redo that. In our county, we had about 5,300 ballots ready. So we will have to reprint those and then repackage. Someone asked about that ballot, that envelope opener back there. We got it all tuned up because we can reuse the inner materials, and I'll go over absentee in general because I think that's appropriate for this time of the election process as well. So we can reuse the inner materials, but of course we have to reprint the ballot, and we can't use the outer envelope because we have to open it. That will destroy that. So there are some materials we can save, but not a whole lot. I'm sure that you are interested in cost at this point, knowing that we are the ones responsible for the budget. And I have that for you here as well somewhere. The initial cost, oh, it's here. The initial cost to do the printing was around $30,000 for that initial piece. And the second reprint cost will be about $28,500, around there. That's our, for this county, yes, just for this county. So the total cost will be 58,500, something around that. That's rough estimates. We did a good job of trying to get as close as we could this morning, so that there could be some small adjustments to that. One thing is that the vendor's charging 25% more for Rush, and we're making sure that that doesn't apply to the other ballots. We had already printed the test deck for logic and accuracy, so we need a new test deck to be able to go do our logic and accuracy testing on all the machines. We had printed our backup early voting ballots, so those were already printed. I would like to pause and congratulate ourselves for having express vote, because we avoid some issues there, so we'll be able to adjust to that just fine. But there's envelopes, there's stock, there's ballot toner for the ballot on demands, the sample ballots, labels, postage, sorting fees with the post office. So those are where those costs are coming from. We have had fantastic coverage in the media, so I'm hoping that we're getting the information out about what's going on. We should get some more information from the state board tomorrow, but the instructions are for the entire state to send out absentee ballots at the same time, so that everyone has about the same amount of time for voting. All the counties have different amounts of absentee ballots and different methods of doing it, and so we'll just have to wait and see. We can't go by what Buncombe County can do. We have to make sure that the whole state is coordinated and ready to do that. So I don't have an estimate on the time of when that will happen. I know that the state board is concerned about the federal deadline, which is the 21st, so I'm sure that there's a push there, so that's in the next couple weeks. Are there any other questions that I can answer? Correct, September 21st.
Could you tell us what staff was working over the weekend to prepare for this eventuality? If you could just give us a little detail on that.
Definitely. So, even bigger than that, when we had to make this pivot, this is a big pivot. I did feel a little like, oh my goodness, okay, there's a lot for us to figure out. But our team really came together. So our team, internally, I tell you all about how proud I am of this team. This was a very good example of that, especially Nagy. She really stepped up to get everyone coordinated and move in the directions that we needed to. So super proud of my team. We also had great communication throughout the county. So Kate stepped up, budget, legal. We have support from everyone. So that felt very good. So I'm confident that we can deliver what we need to deliver. It is a big change, though. I don't want to mitigate that. So it took us a day to print the ballots. We had staff of 25 in here for 2 days with overtime. packing the envelopes and getting everything ready. And then when the court decision came down, we had to step ahead of time because we didn't know what the decision was going to be, along with the state board, and go ahead and start creating those new ballots in case the decision that actually came happened. And so we stayed over the weekend proofing those ballots, and that usually takes weeks of a process, and we did that over the weekend in one day. So that was fantastic. I was very impressed by that turnaround, and that's our staff and the state board coordinating that. So that was really fantastic that got done that fast. So now we're waiting on like the electronic side of things. So SEAMS needs to be updated, and the BOD, which is the Ballot on Demand file, we have to have that before we can print, and that's all waiting on the state to issue those. And like I said, I don't have a timeline on that, but they are working as fast as they can. The other thing along that, in that vein, are the sample ballots. So we do have printed sample ballots, so we have those PDFs available, ready. You can get them at our office. The ones online are not, I'm not sure. We have been able to link them in our system. I don't know if the state board will release those, so I'm not sure when those will be available either. But they are ready.
Mr. Duncan? Just thinking about costs again, so overtime is another cost that we've had to incur.
Mm-hmm.
Will you at some point be able to kind of give us a rough estimate of what that might be as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the state board has asked all the counties to compile data about what this exercise is going to cost.
The state board hasn't yet. I do expect it, but the media sure has.
Well, right.
So we have
Right.
we do have an estimate, yes.
Great.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good.
Yep, we can we can figure out the overtime piece for you, for sure. Are there any other questions on that? All right, so I'm thinking that once we get the file to be able to start printing and SEAMS is updated so that we can get new CIV numbers and all of that, to print the labels, that it'll take 4 days. So once we get that, I think we can process in 4 days and have them ready to issue whenever the rest of the state is ready. I have also reached out to our district to let them know that we can help if needed also. All right. Thank you. That's one of 11. Okay, the rest of these should go quicker. You, as a board, received an email about observers and parking, and I just wanted to address this here in an open meeting so that we don't run into the making meetings outside of meetings by having emails. So I want to do that here. So the question was about limited parking access at some voting locations, whether observers would be able to park at those locations. We do have some sites that have small parking lots, and so at those sites we ask even the poll workers to park at a different location. So we would be asking the observers to park at a different location too. So that's a thing. And then the other question was about access to the authorization to vote, or the early voting, oh gosh, I don't know what they're called now. The early voting applications. The early voting applications. So an observer can look at those and compile a list so that they can give that to a runner that comes in. That's the law. And so we have divided in both cases the notebooks into time frames so that those can be, so that the observer can sit with those and make those lists. So that's how we do it here, to be able to make that a convenient activity so that there's not a conflict between the poll workers and the observers.
Marianne?
Are there any of our locations where observers parking in a different location would create any kind of safety hazard?
Oh, I mean, we're hoping to avoid safety hazards for anyone, any of the voter, poll workers as well. There's none that I'm aware of.
Okay, I just wondered if we were keeping that in mind. I know
Yes.
some of the communications that have been going around have been because of that.
Yes.
In other locations, not in our county.
I
but-
know that the early voting, North Asheville Library, it has a small parking lot, but most people park across the street, which is not across the street, there's a separate parking lot that abuts the library's parking lot. They park in there, and so they don't have to
Yeah,
cross
we had
traffic
an
or
arrangement,
anything
I
like
think,
that.
with those.
Right,
uh,
Mr. Pierce stands ready to talk to all the merchants in the vicinity of the North Asheville Branch Library to try to secure additional parking. We continue to hope that the library will be renovating during the early voting period.
Yes.
Which would just free up tons and tons and tons of space. But I think it's very important that everybody understand, that poll observers understand, is that parking spaces at polling places are for voters. And if you're not a voter, you don't get the priority. I realize that observers are there for a reason, and they're authorized to be there. But voters come and go, and observers tend to be there for a long time. And so I hope that observers understand that they're there to facilitate the process and not impede the process. And clogging up parking lots impedes the process. So I was grateful to see that email, because it put an important issue in front of us. And I just hope that in the training, and I realize it's not mandatory training for poll observers, but I hope that those who do come to our training are informed of the priority. We're all doing this for the voters.
Yes, so that's the other thing, as you know, we have the observer information sessions that we do, and the parties are helping us get the word out, especially to the observers that they know about for that session. So we hope that we can make sure everybody has the information they need at that session and can ask questions too. Are there any other questions that you all are getting that I can help answer now? And we can do this at every board meeting as well, because I want to make sure you have what you need to answer questions. None at this time. Anytime there are questions, the board meetings are a great time to get those answered. Okay, there are two items that also have come up between the last meeting and this meeting that I want to clarify to make sure that the board is aware of and kind of clarify some of our processes. So the first one is public records requests. So we've really, since 2020, we've really evolved in this area. Pre-2020, we could fill the records requests in-house. They were small, we were able to fill those ourselves. There are so many records requests now that we have had to increase our capacity, and we've done that through putting a lot of stuff online, so that's very good. And then partnering with the CAPE team, the county's PR team, to use their public records request portal. So for convenience, we ask people to submit their records requests through that portal. And there's two things that has an advantage of. One is that we can communicate internally, so sometimes things like if an email request is made, then the legal team has to look at it and they can see through that portal. So we have faster communication. We can keep track of them better. And then we can also, sometimes we get the same request, multiple requests. So then we can issue that request much, much faster. So we're thankful that we have that, and I want to make sure that you are all aware of that. And that's how requests for that type of information is made. Are there any questions about that?
Maybe you were going to talk about this later, but how do you want to handle, as part of a broader piece, obviously, when the board has a records request. And, you know, in the perfect world you would create, how would you have that directed? It seems a little awkward to go through the public portal, although the board has the same right as a citizen to request information or records. So, but,
Yeah.
we're not special, we're not that special, but we're a little bit special, so.
Yeah.
What think ye of this?
Yeah, this is a good topic. So, in an ideal world, for my office, I would want to know when you are acting as a board member and when you are acting as a public records requester, and that doing it through this portal would make it very clear. So that is an idea. You obviously do not have to do that, but information that. When we're acting on something, when the board is acting on something in a meeting, and information is wanted for those kind of things, having that request, you know, at the previous meeting would be the most ideal thing. So, you know, I know that that's difficult sometimes, right? I'm talking ideal world. Obviously, we are not in an ideal world.
Sure,
We're
so-
reprinting absentee ballots.
So what I'm
So in the
hearing-
between time, you
Yeah.
know, I think that board communication should happen through the chair. You know, talking about, you know, what kind of information we want at the next board meeting, so that all board members, what I would like is that all board members have the same information at the same time. That not, you know, somebody doesn't have something sooner than somebody else. When it's a board, you know, when it's a board decision type of thing. And we can also, my next thing is talking about how the agendas are created. I assumed everyone understood, everyone knew what process we were doing there, and so I want to talk about that process and make sure that we're all on the same page about that too, and so that might help with that as well.
Director, I understand, the idea that we would all get the same information at the same time, except we don't all have the same questions at the same time.
And I think that's my suggestion of going through the chair, of kind of talking like, all right, as a board, do we want to know all of this same information? Do we want that to be part of how we make the decision of whatever it is together? Because the board should act together.
I agree with
Jake,
that.
so
Mr.
we
Seaver.
got two things swirling around here, and Jake and Corrine and I sat down and we had we kind of had a pre-flight of this issue last week about these issues, and we just flagging things, and that's, I think, that's resulted in Corrine's presentation here. Thank you very much. As board members, we have to be concerned with the Open Meetings Act and the Public Records Act. And the Open Meetings Act is potentially triggered when any three of us get on a communication together. And that could be on anything. So using judiciously our chair and our director to avoid that kind of triggering that law is an opportunity that we have. However, our chair has no executive authority at all. He can't even move a pencil except for about 3 things that the statute specifically delegates to him that have to do with appointing judges and signing the certifications, and there's something else that's just his. But everything else requires that we do it as that's beautiful. Thank you. Everything else requires that we just decide as a group. So my concern is I don't want to put Jake in the situation of being a gatekeeper. I do want to put Jake in a position of intercepting things that would otherwise would put us in open meetings trouble. So, I mean, all of you are encouraged to react to this. In the context of agendas, somebody has to prepare an agenda, and they really need to sit down with Corinne and develop an agenda. And you know, what are we, what is the objective? What are we trying to educate? What are we trying to decide? What information is needed? And, you know, it's a pretty detailed assignment. It makes sense to me to put Jake and Corinne together, but that's what which is what they've been doing, to come up with that agenda. Because if we all jump in there, then we're back in this other problem that we have. We can delegate to Jake pretty much anything, the same way we delegate to Corinne. And what I had discussed with them was that we consider a motion to specifically delegate developing the agenda between the two of them, so that they do that. Because other organizations, municipal organizations, they have an agenda meeting. But that means they have to give public notice and go through all that rigmarole just to set the agenda. That sounds like a whole lot of work to me. So, or too much like work. So I would recommend to the board that you consider ratifying what's already going on, but going on the record with it, that this is something we have specifically delegated to our chair generically, and to Corinne, that they would develop an agenda for us. And then if you have agenda items, you continue to bring them to Jake, as has been our custom up to now. What I'd like to stay away from is the idea that Jake and Corinne are going to get together and run the organization. Now, that would be a problem. Not that they do that, but we just need to avoid that. We've got to make decisions together as a group. But we can look for opportunities to delegate things that will keep us out of open meetings trouble, and will also just expedite the process, and you all use your imagination. You know, we got competent people here, well-intentioned, you know, let's use them.
Is there anything in the statute that talks about delegating that to Jake,
Which that?
the authority to develop the agenda? I'm just looking at both of you to ask for it.
No, I didn't see anything in there, but I think the law is silent on it because there are assumptions made that the chair of a committee develops the agenda. That's the way it happens at the county commission. That's the way it happens at the mayor's office. That is the way it has happened at this Board of Elections without objection until recently.
Yeah,
So,
I don't doubt that that's, let me,
If you go to the Institute of Government website, there's something called Coates's Canons. And a lot of these issues get addressed, and there's several that specifically pertain to the agenda, who sets it. And I'll paraphrase it, it basically says that is something that the board is privileged to do as a group. And but we still get back to this problem of, you know, how are you going to deal with it in the particular? So there's nothing that says that the chair has to do the agenda. Nothing that says that the chair can't do the agenda. It's, you got to come up with something that works.
Yeah.
And stay out of these other problems.
I just have one more question, then I'll stop asking, let you finish. But has there been any issue come up about that that's caused a problem?
Can I just say?
Yeah, please.
So,
Touch that one.
so the right now, we are heading into the presidential election. There are things that are happening super quickly. This happens every single time. We need to make sure that we're having good communications, and that you know, staff time gets very precious during this time, but making sure that you all have the information that you need is also very important. So there's going to be competing time needs. So for me, this is about how we communicate well, how we do it. We can change how we do things. We have, we meaning as far as I know back, we have done the director and the chair has developed the agenda, and then you know, at the meeting the agendas can change. So that's where the board can can change agendas in the way that we're doing it right now. Oh, I lost my other point there.
In the past, the boards and the chair have created the agendas, and
Yes, we created the agendas. Well, and it is, it's very difficult for the board. It would be very, very difficult for the board to create an agenda without staff. There's just too many details and too many, law implications when law changes and things like that. So those pieces need to be there. And I think it's very obvious that we all appreciate the time constraint issues, making sure that we're following the rules about board meetings, making sure we're never doing anything outside of a public meeting, or, accidentally creating public meetings. So making sure that we communicate about that. And then how do we get extra information that the board might want? So we need to solve all of those issues.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah,
may.
Mr. Aceto.
Going to ask a question, where did this come from? It came from me, and here's what I was thinking. I'm not addressing some big shortfall, but I am thinking life is going to get much more interesting very fast. We must think about protecting staff time, staff contact. We must think about avoiding the inadvertent quorum. We must be able to get information. We must be able to coordinate among and communicate with each other. That means using Corrine and using Jake. There's times when Jake should stand in for all of us, and there's times when he shouldn't. The law that creates Jake's office is very specific, unlike other statutes, and that is just certain things that he does. And the reason that is because it's expected that we will make decisions as a group regarding things with a partisan impact. There's not going to be a situation where one of us or a particular party gets together and appears to do anything with staff that creates a problem. So we have to avoid the appearance of that as well as the actuality of it. And what got me thinking about it was that we communicate by text as a group. Well, that can be a problem because it could, if it is involving transaction of public business, but now we've potentially created a meeting. So, but we have to communicate somehow, right? I mean, how are we going to do this? One thing that we talked about in our meeting was AK saving those texts as email files, text as files, so that if someone has a question about that, it's like, here, you think we're doing public business as a board? There you go. We didn't think we were, but at least we don't have a he said, she said thing going where we have to prove a negative. And that's what I would like to avoid. That's part of what we're coming to regarding the dissemination of information. Here's a point where I may be in disagreement, but if our board members want to ask for information individually, they don't have to stick their hand up and step in a role. Any person, according to the statute, can ask for information or documents. The question is, how do we set that up and with protocols that will not burden the staff and will allow us to stay on the same page? So if there's your suggestions, or I would suggest that you go through Corrine as board members, not go directly to staff, go to Corrine and copy Jake. So now he's speaking for all of us. He knows what's going on, and but there's no statutory limitation on what you can do. We can set up a protocol as a board for staff for communications, for record requests, and for information requests, which, by the way, is two different things.
You bet.
I would hate to. I don't want to get that complicated if we possibly can. The public website, the public portal. That's a protocol. That's a way in. But I'm a bit concerned that we need to have access as board members, but at the same time, we need to not burden the staff or create a question about, you know, who's calling the shots, whether we're individually doing that. So, you know, and I would like to get that worked out before it starts getting really crowded, which it already is, and it is going to get more so.
Well, I'm sorry, I've just not seen a controversy in this space. Others do. I don't. Robert's Rules of Order are very clear about who creates the agenda for a committee or a commission, and it's the president or chair. That is something Robert's Rules of Order are part of the fabric of our public meetings. And I'm not familiar with Coates Canon, but you know, I see a process here that is working. And if it's broken, I hope someone will show me where it is broken. I do want to point out the distinction between public records and information. A record is a product. It is something that, and just for argument's sake, I'm going to talk about election services. It is a product that election services staff has created. And any such work product is going to be available to the public. Information requests are something else. An information request is a request to have staff do more work, to do more research, to develop a new report, reformat something. It's something that's not right off the shelf. In the first case, I would never want a board member, including myself, talking to any member of the staff and telling them, I need this report from you. In every single instance, it should go through the director, because the director directs staff, and there's not a single board member who does. So please, if there's something you want, please work through the director. If there's something that somebody wants on the agenda, just let me know. And it will be on the agenda, and we'll discuss it at the meeting. It's worked that way for a long time, and I don't see where it has failed to work up to this point. So we're spending a whole lot of time talking about this, and I'm still struggling to see what the problem is, what the issue is. Ms. Breen.
The problem, as I see it, was I made a request for information to the director. The director told me I could not have that information until the next board meeting, and I felt like I needed that information to prepare for that board meeting. It wasn't additional work, it was an updated list. So it was simply a list that already existed.
No, actually the list did not exist. The staff was drafting a list.
Well,
and
the update would be whatever
The-
is there.
We all received the update at our last board meeting. We all received the same information at the same time. None of us had seen it beforehand, including myself. And that is by design.
Well,
'cause
then this is the issue that we're talking about. Can a board member ask for information?
in this case, it was inappropriate to ask for a list that was still being compiled,
Then why was I allowed that list several times previously?
because that list had been compiled, was pulled off the shelf and handed to you. This one was still being compiled.
I received a list previously that was in process.
And then that list was delivered to you in error. Staff should not have delivered that list because it wasn't a product.
But that leaves our board members waiting until we get to a board meeting for information that we might feel like we need to
Well,
make decisions at a board meeting like we are going to make today.
at our meeting last month, it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, we all received the list that was being proposed by staff. That was the product that you were after. you received that product the same time every other board member did, it would not have been appropriate to deliver that product to you before your 4 colleagues got it. And the appropriate place to deliver it was at that meeting where staff could fully describe the process they had used to compile the list.
Okay, in these lists that we're talking about, there are deadlines.
Right?
And when these deadlines are going to be met before that next meeting, then I do feel like that there's an issue with being able to get information.
Well, there's one thing about a deadline for someone to submit information. It's a totally different thing once staff receives that information, the time they need to deal with it. And I think that there needs to be some consideration given to the fact that staff has work to do. They want to make sure the quality and completeness of their work before they share it with us. And that's what we saw in the case of this list of early voting election officials. So I'm still struggling to see the problem here. We've had that list for weeks. We've had an opportunity to review. Mr. Aceto, please.
The statute does not use the word product. It uses information
Yep.
and documents. A document is when information has been reduced to some tangible form, which could be an email, it could be a draft. Drafts are specifically understood by the Institute of Government to be documents for purposes of the statute. And when something has been reduced to a tangible form, any person is entitled to receive it. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has to drop everything and give it to them, because that's not specific. It's never really said. But denying it is potentially a violation of the public records law. So we need to make a distinction as we are communicating with the staff between information, which has to be assembled and requires staff effort, and a document which exists and can simply be presented. That's 2 different things. So for purposes of the law, there is no such thing as a product. It's a document or it's information. If it's information, then the staff has got a whole lot more room to avoid being tormented, but documents have to be produced. So
And what is a document, sir?
a document is, forgive me, I don't have it's defined, it's in the statute, but it is basically something that's capable of being reduced to a tangible form. Could be like you could print out a file. Now, if something's in process and it takes the form of a draft, well, guess what? Now it's a document. So, and staff should keep this in mind as they're doing things, and think, am I producing a document at this point that someone could or possibly ask for? Or is this still just information that I'm assembling?
Okay,
And
can we
that's,
look at
that's
this?
gonna be, that's another whole seminar to get into, and I don't wanna do it tonight. But that people who are struggling with this law have been struggling with that since it was enacted in.
Okay.
in
I'm going to tell you my perspective on the request for the list of early voting election officials. Staff was working on something. Staff needed time to get the something into a condition to share with the board. The last thing that I want to see is members of this board looking over the shoulders of staff as they do their staff work. And my perception of the request was we had a board member who wanted to look over the shoulder of staff as staff was trying to complete their work. It's inappropriate. It is a burden on staff. And again, there was no good reason that I could see why one board member should get this preliminary information, wasn't even ready to show to the board yet, before the whole board gets this information, which is information that we need to review and then vote on. So looking over staff's shoulder is a show of hands. Who thinks it's a good idea?
You have no authority to make that decision. That is not the prerogative of the chair. That's why we have to work this out together. And that, if we have a problem, it's that. If you directed staff and said, don't show her that document, not only did you just commit a public records violation, you violated the whole principle of this board, which is we act together. We don't have an executive board member, we have an executive staff member. That's my concern going forward, is that you understand that and that be made clear.
Okay, I would suggest that there was no document to share. Okay? There was not a document, I used the word product and you are using the word document. I am viewing them synonymously. And when we spoke about this some time back, I used my cake metaphor. And we had a request, staff is baking a cake. We're really excited. We're really curious about this cake. Might be really good. And we have someone that says, I want to see it. I want to see what it's like. I want to get some idea. And I said, no. If we pull that cake out now, it's going to fall. At least wait till it's done enough so that we can put the toothpick in it, see if it comes out clean or if it's still got crumbs on it. At our last meeting, we got that cake right after it was pulled out. We tested it. And then we had 4 or 5 weeks to take a look at that and figure out, is this done? Are we okay with what's in this? We now have a document. Or do we need to get back with staff and make some suggestions, some revisions? You pull out a cake too soon, guaranteed no one's going to be happy with it. And that is the one thing that I suggested to staff they not do.
Mr. Quinn, that is a gorgeous metaphor.
Delicious metaphor.
It's a delicious metaphor. The only thing I take issue with is that you are not the chef.
I'm not.
So if you are telling staff it ain't soup yet, you are encroaching. Please don't do that. That's all I ask.
Thank you. Corinne?
Okay, so I'm very glad that we're having discussions about communications, for sure. We need to make sure that we're communicating well. So back to the beginning. I want to stay away from making anyone feel bad about anything. So what I'm hearing is that there was more information that was wanted between the meetings, and maybe we waited too long between those 2 meetings. It was a whole month between the meetings. So either we have another meeting in between, or we find some way that the board is requesting what information they want so that they're ready for the next meeting. And I would like that to be at the meetings. So at the meetings, we ask for, at the next meeting, I would like to see this and that, and we try to provide that. That's the form that I would like, as acting as a board member on board member decisions, because that makes it clear to me. This is
For the board.
for the board, material, and then everybody gets it so that everyone has the same. That it's important to me that the board receives the same information.
Two things that I've thought of too while we've been having this conversation. One, I certainly agree with you, but there are many things that come up within a month that we're not going to
Yes.
know of the month before to say
Now
say
you all
that.
will not have the privilege of waiting a month between
No, we
meetings here
won't from
soon,
this
so.
point forward. The second thing was in the cake analogy. I was thinking about the fact that if the information had gotten in my hands or someone else's hands, we risk the possibility of information that's not accurate getting out. And I think that that's a pretty high risk that I don't want to take. I'd much rather do it as a full board, and that we're talking about it openly in a meeting rather than me have a piece of paper that no one else yet has that might not be a finished document, and then it somehow gets loose out in the world. I think that that's a danger, and it would concern me. And so going through the documents of some protocol way makes sense to me so that everyone knows what it is that's been sent. And if it needs to be in between meetings and the board members ask for that, we go through a protocol we've established. And Jake is CC'd or not, we can decide that as a board. about that, and that we follow that protocol so that we don't run into this kind of ickiness again. But I am concerned about anything that's not coming out as a finished document, because of the potential of that getting misinterpreted, misread into someone's hands. That would be an issue.
Anyone else have any reactions, responses to Director Duncan's? Ms. Brain?
When was the statutory deadline for the list that we're gonna approve today?
5 days before today.
Which would have been the 5th. Today's the
Yes.
10th. So we had a meeting a month ago. Any changes now, we'll have to deal with in this meeting
That's right.
because that deadline has passed.
That's right.
And that's the issue. All of these board members, we're here at different times. We've been here for different lengths of time. I'm gonna have more questions than Mr. Cito or Glenn. They've been here longer, certainly more than our chair. So how are we gonna deal with the fact that some of us are gonna need more information than others feel like they need?
I want the information that's provided to one board member provided to all the board members, and that's how Ms. Duncan has operated, to make sure that we all get it. In fact, that's why Ms. Moore is kind enough to send us the occasional email, occasional text message, hey, look at your emails. Because we sent you all the same information at the same time. We want to make sure you're aware of it, because, ladies and gentlemen, we don't check our buncombecounty.org emails every day. I got to tell you, we don't do that. They do, but we don't. Director Duncan.
But Mary Ann's point is important. So what we're trying to do is, at the previous meeting, supply all of the information that you need for this next meeting. And it is true that staff knows, I mean, we're doing this every single day. We have a lot of information. We're doing our best to supply what we think that you all need for the meetings. In this case, and this will be really an interesting meeting, because we'll get to the early voting plan, and I think in this case you'll see there's just not that many changes, which is what we anticipated. I hope that we get this opportunity later on, but the parties have made giant leaps in communicating with us. We've moved deadlines up. You know, we've had the statutory requirements, but they're not really practical, and we'll talk about that later. And the parties have been wonderful at that, and we'll talk about parity and kind of trying to get closer to that too later. So I think this will all play out in the meeting later. So I think sometimes it can be that staff knows that it's going to be consumable at the next meeting, but you don't know that. So we need to maybe do a better job of explaining the processes and what's going on at those meetings, and having more time kind of doing overviews. And I can absolutely commit to that, trying to do more of an overview of the process. We stop and take time to ask questions about it, and then that might spur, oh, actually I would like this information for that next meeting, and then we can, here in a board meeting in front of everyone, have that information disseminated. So I'm happy to commit to, you know, kind of having a more thorough overview of the things that we're doing.
Reactions, comments, discussion?
Continuous improvement. We want to make this better
I have
every
a
single
reaction.
time.
We do. Yeah, Mr. Aceto?
Jake, Green, Board, thank you very much. It's an excellent discussion. Got to say everything I wanted to say, and I hope you did too.
Thank you, sir.
And that was as usual. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'm still a little
Mr. Schultz.
confused about how you want us to go about, and I don't submit requests for information. I just wait to see what comes up at the board meeting. But how do you want us to proceed in terms of requests for information, public documents request, or those two?
So, circling back to at the very beginning, when it was asked, how do I want things to happen? doesn't mean it has to happen that way, but it helps me to have the distinction between, I want this information for the purpose of making a decision at a future board meeting. I would like that to have a distinction so that I can disseminate that to all the board members. I feel like we're probably all on the same page that, you know, whether you want it or not, you would like all the board members to have that information, so.
And it becomes a
being-
priority to you that way
Yes,
as well. so.
being clear about that, and, but the board needs to act together. Like, one board member can't cause those things, so that's why talking to each other and going through the chair makes sense to me. But I understand if that is not how you want things to be done. If it is some personal information that's wanted for a purpose that doesn't have anything to do with board action, I want that to be clear, that that's what, you know, I'm asking for a public records request or whatever it is, and then we act accordingly that way. You don't have to go through the portal, but it makes it so much better. We really encourage the portal. And it would be a very clear signal to me and AK and everyone who works in those public records requests that that's what that is. So I'm kind of seeking that kind of distinction.
Sure, Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Sidney.
Going in that case, here, the chair sends in for all of us. It really ought to be copied. But if the chair decides what happens to it next and it goes through the chair and then goes to Kareem, no, absolutely not, not ever, not never. But he needs to be in the loop because he's, you know, to that extent, he's speaking for, he needs to know what we're doing because he's there. But he doesn't need to be a gatekeeper for what goes through Kareem or beyond Kareem.
Right. Yeah.
That's the biggie takeaway to me. But we can't be passing things around among each
No.
other all the time. We've got to make use of this connection.
Thank you. Not gatekeeper, facilitator. I want to make sure that everything that members of this board want to discuss is on the agenda for the meeting. And when we get together, that's what we try to figure out. You know,
And we don't have a problem. There's
Topic,
no
topic,
problem in
topic,
that.
topic,
I don't think we've ever,
good,
there's
good.
no issue with that.
Yeah. No,
There's no issue with that not
I
happening.
like discussion. It's
Yeah, no,
it's what we're here for. Right, thank you.
So what are we settling on?
Well, actually, Director Duncan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you suggested as we get through the early voting poll worker appointments and the MAT appointments and that sort of stuff in this meeting, that it's, I thought you
No,
thought
we're
things were
talking
gonna
about
gel.
the actual process to request information. So the process is, as
Well,
I understand it,
The request for information is, we're gonna do that at meetings, right? I mean,
Well, but-
if we want materials for the board, we're gonna
Right.
make those requests at meetings. And requests for information, what we heard was,
well, I
please
think
use
it
the
has to go
portal.
one more step.
Okay.
I think it has to be even in between. That I will never always have all the right ideas in my head when I'm sitting at this desk. There may be something that comes up to my attention a week later. I have to have capacity to be able to ask Corinne and CCU about this is what I would like to have at the next meeting. It can't always just be the prior meeting. Has to be the interim as well, in my way of looking at it.
So a request to me, CC Jake, all the information goes to all the board.
Yes.
Right. As
And
long as it goes to
fine with me.
everybody, as long as it goes to everybody.
And then being clear that, you know, we want this for everyone
Right.
as a board member.
So plan A is to do it at the meeting prior. Plan B is in between if we need it.
Yes.
And as Corinne alluded to, very soon, we're gonna be meeting at least once a week.
Right.
So, the communications piece should work a whole lot more.
And I may wake up at 3 a.m.
Easily.
and
No.
have a burning question.
Well, in that case, you.
Sally?
have to call Jay.
I'll call Jim.
Sally, melatonin is your friend. 5 milligrams, you'll go right back to sleep.
And since AK is such an integral part of communication, it would be great if she was CC'd also.
Oh, thank
so
you.
we can
Thank you,
keep
thank you,
track
thank
of
you.
things.
And then she can save these things,
Mhm.
And she does.
which is
Good.
very, very, that's the retention aspect of the public record. You're not gonna keep things for the same length of time, depends on what it is, what it was for. So, but we have experts. We just have to make sure the experts have the material.
Good.
And then just because text messages were mentioned, I'm sure that our audience doesn't know what we do in those text messages, so I just wanted to make sure that they understand what it's for. So it's a group message where we send out reminder, there's a board meeting, it's at 3:30, not at 5:30, come at 3:30, please. It's basically information from staff out to the board. The board's not transmitting information back.
The magic words are, you're not transacting public business.
That is absolutely correct.
That's the magic
Yep,
word. But
they're
the magic
reminders.
question is, how do we establish that as to all of our communication if it comes up, so that we're not having to prove a negative?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. But I just wanted everyone to know what that function was. We sent an email, go check your email, those kind of things. Sometimes we might say happy birthday. That's in there. That can be in there. But, yeah. But that's what that's for.
All righty, thank you. You're
Okay.
still doing office updates, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. It's before we were an hour into this. Goodness. Okay, thank you again. I second Steve. The more that we have these kind of conversations, the better that we will function as we move along, because we will need to be nimble. We already are being nimble. Okay, so we're gonna shift a lot here. So I just wanted to remind everyone about absentee, because our next meeting, October 1st, is an absentee board meeting. That could be a very big meeting too, depending on when these ballots get to people.
Right.
If it's sooner rather than later, we could have a lot of absentee ballots at that meeting. So save that Wednesday. So we have the Tuesday meeting and then the Wednesday just in case meeting. We might have that.
Yeah, that's on our calendars.
Yes, that should be on the calendar, and it will be on the updated one that will get presented later today. But essentially, the voters are going to get in a envelope in the mail that looks like this, and it will have this contents in it. It will have a return envelope, so this is what the voter will return the ballot in. It will have a ballot. That's a pretty important piece of this. It will have absentee voter instructions, so this tells everybody what they need to do to complete and return the absentee ballot. And then, you guys might have PTSD over seeing these, but here's the envelope that you're really familiar with. So the voter needs to sign. They either need 2 witnesses and a notary, and then if they get any type of assistance, that assistant needs to sign there. All that information is, again, in the absentee instructions. Absentee voters do need to provide an ID. They make a photocopy of it. It can be black and white, that's fine. They put it in this sleeve. If for some reason they are unable to do that, there is the photo ID exception form in there too. They fill that out, tell you as a board why they can't do that, and then that comes to the board meeting. Last day to request is October 29th, and then the deadline is still election day at 7:30 to get those in.
And just so y'all know, it's $1.77 to mail it in. USPS, it was $1.63 in the primary. It's up to $1.77. We all know that Postal Service boosted rates. And it is a bigger document this time. The ballot is, I think, it's a bigger piece of paper.
Yeah, so we have a 19-inch ballot this election.
Yeah, there are a number of referenda questions, and the fine print is very fine.
It's not that bad, actually.
One of the great
Depends on the
things,
eyes,
there's so many good reasons that we got express vote. The fact that we don't use pre-printed ballots for those things,
Yeah. it was
that's
very
just
good.
one, but it helps on this too.
Yes.
Chairman,
Kathy?
is it clear to the voters that it's now $1.72?
Yeah, you'll see on the instructions, it's right on the front page above the fold. It's right there, it says
In
$1.77.
red.
And,
And
I-
the media are sharing that information as well?
I hope, I
We're
hope.
giving it,
It's good information, you never know what they're gonna pass along. But, early voting, 2.5 weeks. No charge. Come on in.
So October 1st, 3 o'clock, that's our first absentee meeting. Could
3:30.
be 3:30, thank you.
Thank
Could be, just be here at 3, just to
Mr. Black, did you have a question?
be ready.
Yes, just curious, how many requests for absentee ballots have we received so far?
That is a fantastic question. So, requests for absentee ballots have essentially been open the whole year because you can request to get all of the, all absentees all year. So that we always have the most requests at that first printing. So right now, we're at about 6,000. And a little bit get added each day as new requests come in. We won't have a gigantic jump, but every day we'll get more.
And bear in mind, in 2020, the number was just north of 51,000 requests that we had.
Yeah, that first printing, we sent out, I think, 16,000 absentee ballots at that first printing in 2020.
Yeah.
So 6,000 is not a little number, though, so we could have a significant number come back, depending on how much time people have. All right. Ready to move to the next one? Okay, next one. This is a really hard shift. This was my top priority before absentee ballots, but but we can switch back to this. So we received number memo 2024-5. That I've sent all of that to you all. This is about criminal history record checks for employees of county boards. So I just wanted to clarify what was happening there. First of all, we already do background checks. They aren't this background check, though. So we need to fulfill this requirement. I, as a director, have already done this, so the state manages my criminal history background check. So that's complete. We need to do it for all of our staff. I have reached out to the ID Bureau Director, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow to figure out how to complete this. I believe, I'm not certain about this, but I believe there are other county employees that have to go through this same check. So we should, the county should already have an account and things like that, which would speed our process up quite a bit. So we will work on getting these complete, and I'll keep you updated on that process, and we'll try to get it done as soon as we can.
You could use Sphurion.
So Sphurion already does the background checks, but they don't do, this is a SBI criminal history check. So
okay,
it
okay.
involves fingerprints and all
Oh,
kinds
my.
of extra things. So we'll work on getting that done. So, but I wanted to, make sure you already knew that I think when a memo comes out like this, people might think, oh my gosh, there's been no checks. That's not true. We do background checks on everyone, so this is more. So we'll get that done.
So for the seasonal workers, you'll have to follow the procedure in 2024-5.
Anyone that has access to Seams will have to do this, so yes. Poll workers don't, so it's not poll workers, so it's the in-house staff, so minus me, that's 11 permanent, and I think we're almost at 40 total. So I can't do that math in my head, apparently.
They don't
But
care
like
about us.
25 people. No, you don't have access to Seams, so you don't have to do it. Seems you don't, yes. All right, so I'll keep you updated on that. I'll have a lot more information about how we'll actually implement it tomorrow. And that's a new director, Oscar Wooten, and he has been super communicative and helpful with this. So I'm confident that we can roll through that pretty quickly. All right, next, we're at number 7. poll worker training. Okay, we're setting up for poll worker training on Friday. On Monday, we start early voting training. So we have that right around the corner. We did secure training space. We have 40 Cox Avenue, so that's the big basement conference room of the HHS building right across from our warehouse for early voting. That's the first 2 weeks, I think, of the training.
When does
And
that
then-
start?
It starts Monday, the 16th,
16th.
September 16th.
That's the last entry on our calendars that
Yes.
were distributed at the top of the meeting.
So early voting will be first, and then we'll move to election day. And all told, that'll take us 6 weeks to complete the training process, because we have a lot of poll workers. For election day, we will be doing the training at 200 College, and we're going to be doing it on the 2nd floor. TD Bank is moving out, and we're gonna use that area for election day training. The county management is aware of our training space hurdles, and we will work early next year to make a stable space. I am really hoping for 40 Cox. That's a very good location for us, so hopefully we can get on the calendar for that location further into the future now that it's been escalated to county management. Any questions on poll worker training?
Are you still planning to train all those employees, or all of those poll workers, with the judge training?
So for early voting, there is the chief judge / captain training, so those people will get that training, and then everyone else will be judge training, like party judge training for workers, for early voting. Good question. Any others? Number 8. So this one's a super quick one. We talked about election services moving to 35 Woodfin. That is rolling. So they have started construction over there, and they think that we will move in January of 2025. I feel like that's an aggressive plan. But essentially, we don't have to move right away. We can move when that works best for us. And so, but I just want to emphasize that that's going to happen. Election services will be at 35 Woodfin next year. I wasn't sure how clear I was the first time that I presented it, because we've gone through a lot of stages. Like, maybe it will happen, but it is happening.
What's the
Has there-
address again? The address?
35 Woodfin Street.
That's the Family Justice Center.
Oh, street, not place.
So just down the street.
Has there been any additional discussion about the use of boardroom? Because it seemed to me that there was gonna be an issue if we were gonna be sharing boardroom. Other departments may be able to just push off their meetings. We cannot always do that, and we can't always plan for when we're gonna have to have a meeting.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That was my biggest concern at the time. Now I have other concerns. The board meetings, though, there's actually only 3 other departments. We're gonna be sharing with a lot of other departments in that building, because the idea is a one-stop shop for the county. So there'll be a lot of sharing, but there are actually only 3 departments that have boards. The planning does theirs in the morning, so we will not conflict. And then air quality has a flexible board schedule, and so we can coordinate with them. And so I don't see, I know there'll be hurdles because we have to share. Right now, we don't have to share, and we just don't have to do any coordinating. Coordinating is going to happen. That comes with communication issues, as we've talked about. But I am confident that we will figure that out. It is sort of a modular setup that I don't like. it's supposed to be so that it can move and set up for the different board sizes. I don't know how that's gonna work, but that's for them to figure out. My concern now is the lobby. I want to make sure that people come in and they don't get confused about where they're going, where's elections, all of that stuff. Strategy and innovation is a department in the county that works on solving these sort of interdepartment issues. So they're working with general services, who does the building planning, to see what they can come up with. One of the suggestions, which I really like, is having a greeter. So an actual human. I don't know if you've been to HHS, but you walk in, there's a friendly person there, they ask you what you need and help direct you. I'm hoping that gets built into the plan because it's not in there right now. But I have some questions about how the flow will work there. I want it to be a friendly interaction. We have a lot of control over how that happens here, and I'm hoping that we can keep a positive atmosphere there.
Is there any place for suggestions?
Oh. What would be a good way to make suggestions? There's the Let's Talk portal that the county has that you can make any suggestions at. And then, of course, I'm happy to pass on suggestions also. Any other questions? Number 9. Sticker contest. We have a winner. That winner, the sticker was voted
yeah.
on. It looks like this. And we actually have stickers. So you can pass those around. You can't have one because it's only
Because
when
you haven't
vote.
voted yet.
But there they are, and I will present the winner at the next commissioners meeting, which is next Tuesday, September 17th at 5 p.m. And of course, you all are welcome to attend that if you would like. It's on one of the good news items, and it's at the beginning of the meeting, so we have that. Yes. All right, so that is that. The 17th is also National Voter Registration Day, and so we're doing some things that day. We have partnered with the libraries. They are going to celebrate Voter Registration Day as well. They're getting a training on how to help voters with the voter registration forms, and they'll have tables at all the libraries. I'll do a Facebook Live media availability at Inca Library in the morning. And then AB Tech is doing a voter registration celebration, and I have been invited to do a talk there, so I will do that as well that day. And then we'll have the sticker contest presentation in the evening. So we have stuff happening that day. You guys, we're on number 11. Number 11 is the budget update. Victoria will help me with that. And the first thing that I'm gonna go, since it's been a long time since we've done this, not a year actually, because we're starting earlier, but it's been a bit. So I want to make sure that I remind you all of the budget process, because we'll be hearing about it along the way. Okay, so administratively, elections departments in North Carolina are overseen by the State Board of Elections. We all know that, but they are funded by the individual counties. So Buncombe County government funds Buncombe County Election Services. So one of the many duties of the board is to approve a budget for us to request from the commissioners. So we can ask for stuff, but the commissioners have to approve it. So there's a lot on me to make that a receptive request. And we've done a great job in the past. We've been very supported by the county commissioners. And we'll go through our ideas of what our next request will be. We've had some big requests in the past. We don't have big requests this time, so there's not a whole lot there. But I want to make sure you know what we're thinking right now, so it's not the first time you hear it when we do, when we get further into things. The fiscal year is from July to July, so we just started fiscal year 25, so we're talking about fiscal year 26. We're developing that right now. Then how the process works in Buncombe County is, staff creates the initial request, so we all get together, all 12 of us, and figure out what is needed for the following fiscal year. We started really changing how we did budgeting in 2020, fiscal year 2021, and it's starting to really pay off. So we have a really nice budget to compare to. FY26 will be very well compared to FY24. So we have a nice base to start there. And we go through, figure that out, and then we put all of that together and we present that to you. We're doing kind of the preliminary presentation now that just sort of has a general idea of what we're thinking, how close are we to fiscal year 24, those kind of things, and Victoria will give you those details. And then we'll bring that back to you more refined in December or January, and that as we get closer, you all can decide what you're thinking there. Our county deadlines are that we have to have this entered into the budgeting system by the end of January. So we as a board, well, you as a board, need to, we have to be at a comfortable place of, yes, staff, we think that's a good budget to propose to the commissioners, and that's when we'll put that into the budgeting system and start the whole county process, which is I present 3 times to my assistant county manager, Tim Love. Then I likely will present to Avril. That has changed over budget cycle, so we'll see what is needed there. It's usually just for expansions, but I have always presented to Avril, so we'll see what that happens. If there are adjustments along the way, if the county management in the past has said everyone has to cut their budgets by 10%, then we'll bring that back to you, and we'll talk about that so that we can agree or disagree or we'll go through those issues. Then Avril takes that final budget and brings that to the commissioners, and that's when we know whether it's a final approval or not. And that process takes like 4 months to complete. So that's the process. The budget is split into operating, and that's the one that we focus on the most because we don't have control over the others. So the operating funds is what we'll talk about a lot today. There's also personnel requests, which we plan on submitting that same personnel request for a formal assistant director that we did last time. There's also what's called ITGC, that is the IT Governance Committee. Those are for proposals for IT things that would actually go in the IT's budget, not in Bunco's budget. That's why they have to go through a committee, so that whether IT is willing to accept this or not. And we do have 2 ideas for those. Those are just in the beginning stages. Then there's the capital request. So the express votes fell under the capital request. We don't anticipate having any of those this go around, although we do need to start thinking about our scanner replacement, the DS200s. We bought those in 2015. They are doing fantastic. They're doing great, but we need to decide when we want to replace those. And then there's the non-discretionary category, again, one that we don't have to worry about. That has shared expenses like phones and the printer systems and those kind of things. So it's kind of like a community fund that we contribute to. So what we have today is kind of a rough idea of what we are doing. It will change. We'll refine things over the next few months and then present to you like an actual proposal to you. And and then we can decide how many meetings or more information that's needed from there.
Okay, in terms of the move to 35 Woodfin Street, is that being budgeted by facilities, or is that something that you need to address? Because it certainly isn't in this year's budget for us. I mean, we weren't planning to go to 35 Woodfin Street as far as I know.
Yeah, so Jake is correct, so that was not budgeted for, because that's in this budget, and that was not part of the plan. And facilities, it does have a budget, I don't know how much that is, we haven't done a lot of
Okay.
talking about that, but I'm sure that we will get more details about what's in that.
Yeah, along with that, I was thinking the same thing, Jake, but I was wondering about if there's anything that would be considered a capital expense
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
Yeah, from a
Capital is
relocation.
over 100,000, is that
It's
right?
over 100,
Yeah. But there are, I think that's actually a very good thing for me to bring back to you. So, and if I say my board asked,
Good.
I bet I'll get an answer. I think that things like the actual moving cost, we use Gasperson movers for a lot of things. Are we going to do that, or are they moving? So
Right.
I'll try to get some
Right,
details.
good.
All right, are we ready for Victoria to give some, overview, detailed overview,
Detailed overview.
specific overview?
Okay.
Yes.
So as of right now, we are at 1.5 million in requests. It is about 80,000 more than what we actually spent in fiscal year '24. So we had 1.4 in fiscal year '24, and just as a reminder, we had our current budget is 1.6 million. So far, we've spent 100,000 of that 1.6, but we're just now getting.
Getting to the fiscal
Yes.
year.
We have two larger one-time requests. One is for ballot bag replacement, and that'll be about 50,000. So that's just replacing all our ballot bags that come back on election night. And then the ballot display kits, and those are the totems that are at the voting sites that have information on them. So that would be 12,750.
I'm sorry, what was that? I just didn't.
It's
The second one, what was it
it's
again?
it's a ballot display kit, and it
Oh, okay.
is the totems that go out on to the sites, and it has like I guess the precinct maps and election laws and
Yeah, there's certain stuff that we have to present
Have to
at all the polling locations, and we currently have it on kind of this card. I think Mary Ann may have an opinion on this. It's like this cardboard thing that you have to like hug.
Sometimes
and-
they stand up and sometimes they don't.
Yep, and they're not, they got too many hugs and they're not.
They got too many hugs.
So we need to replace those.
With something different, I hope.
Yes, we do, and we can present, actually what those things are,
Good.
if that would be useful.
Okay, and then we have, we're considering submitting to ITGC requests. One is for poll worker management software, and then replacing our current phone tree system. So when you call our main office, the system that you get when you first call.
1, 2, 3 for this, for that.
Yes.
It's pretty cumbersome.
And the other, for the poll workers, what would that, would that be replacing something that we now use? What would that be replacing?
So right now, we use Excel, basically. Yeah, we kind of spreadsheet manage those, and we think that there could be a better system. We saw something at the elections conference that kind of sparked this idea, that integrated polling locations. Those two are very close together, so there might be some like efficiencies there. It can send out emails. Right now, we make a giant email group. I think we can maybe modernize that some.
And that's all I have. That's So the IT requests are the first deadline that we have, which is September 27th. And that is just submitting those two ideas to IT, and then they decide, you know, what to do with them, if they want to look into them or whatever, so, yeah.
Yep, yeah, so the ITGC, we're gonna go ahead and do that because it's just, those are explorations, so, you know, IT might say, nope. You know, and then we just don't pursue that, so, or find a different way to represent that in the budget if we feel like we really need something.
Or you
so-
may find a department that says, you know, I could really use a new phone tree system too.
Yes,
And you
that's-
get economies by doing this collaboratively.
Yep, that is absolutely the purpose of ITGC, that we're not all having the same function with different products.
Right.
There might be a department that already has a phone tree system that works better than ours. So essentially, long story short, the budget's not that different from FY '24. We have a few items, one-time purchases that we think that we should suggest, and then we want to explore some IT new avenues, new processes.
Have you considered adding anything in for the additional cost for this year?
The adding the
Well, the 28,500 for
Oh, for
reprinting
the
ballots and stuff
reprinting.
like that.
like
Well, I mean,
kind-
that's gonna take up money that you have in the budget that you'd plan to use for something else.
Yes, so those things go into contingency. Yes. So, at the beginning, we try to guess the contingencies.
You know, these you can't guess for, though.
Exactly, so there's the second primer, we kind of give this warning of, here's all the things we think could happen, here's something we didn't know was gonna happen. So
But you
we
have no choice about it.
yes, so you know how I was talking at the beginning about how we have this great communication, it was the same thing with budget. So when we were getting the media request, we looped budget in, and so they're aware of the increased cost so far, and so they will help us find a plan to pay for those things.
Mr. Aceto.
I mean, do you have a percentage that you use for contingency, like you would like on a construction project, or do you have is this an art, is it a science? I mean, how do you do it?
It is definitely an art.
It's an art.
Yes.
It's called a swag,
So-
a systemized wild-ass guess. No. And you look at your history to figure out what sort of percentage you normally use. But and this is election land, and so you boost it up a few percent.
I'm just curious, how do you come up with this one? Does it come out of a percentage? Does it?
Yeah, so how it operates in Buncombe County, so we do go through and we think about, like, probably our biggest cost is the possibility of second primaries, because they happen sometimes and they don't happen sometimes. We got one this time, so, sometimes we're able to absorb that second primary cost, so we can, it's sort of like at the end of the year, we'd see, you know, where did we end up? Was there things we didn't have to spend on, so we can shift that money around? So we do that first. Then we have to, if we go over budget, we have to ask for contingency funds. And the county has a certain amount that's set aside for contingency that's for the whole county. So we tell them, well, here's what the risks that we see, and then it's up to them to make sure that they plan for that.
But
That they figure out what risk they want to take on those contingencies.
if you exceeded the proposed budget for that sort of thing with the second primary and then the reprinting of the ballots, the law requires the county to pay for that, no questions asked, correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
The county must pay for the operations of elections, yep.
But I
and-
mean, that aspect of the operations of elections,
Yeah.
the second primary and then the reprinting of the ballots.
Yes,
Right,
yep, anything required for voters to vote, yes.
And we're fortunate that this county does have enough flexibility to be able to, you know, fill the breach when it comes to this 28,500. Really concerned about smaller counties that have a much tougher budgetary process because they've got a smaller revenue stream and they've got a lot of demands. Yeah, unfortunately, that court decision didn't give us any money. It just gave us an assignment.
All right, any more questions? And we're planning on presenting in that same format, the spreadsheet with all the programs. We had an improvement last time, so we'll continue with that. And then if there are other things that you all want, and this is a thing that we'll present, and then you'll see it again. So we can make
Yeah.
sure everyone has what they need for making that decision.
Yeah, I dug into the files and pulled out last year's edition, and you're just talking about doing the exact same format, right?
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and I think it'll just be, each time that we go through the budget, we refine it better, and so the like matching between years becomes better and better. That's been a challenge in the past of like, well, this category changed and not, that's kind of settling out now.
Oh, wow. Here's the budget presentation timeline from last time, too. They've got an earlier deadline for you.
All right, do we have any more questions for Victoria?
Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks.
Is that all 11?
That's all 11.
Woohoo!
Only took an hour and a half.
All right, colleagues. Well, I think that's setting a record for office updates. That's the longest one I can remember. Next up is item 4, multi-partisan assistance team appointments. We did appointments last time, and it looks like it's time for an update. Mr. Tate.
Well, move this microphone closer. There we go. First, I want to thank both parties and Ms. Caroline Ray for helping establish the MAT teams that we have right now. I am eternally grateful for the people that we have this go round. Everyone stepped up when we needed to get the ballots ready for absentee. They're going to be back when we need to send them back out again. The teams that you guys helped us put together were phenomenal. I cannot be more grateful for the work that all of you've done. I'm truly, truly appreciative. Like I said, I'm here today just to add in a drop, and like I said, no complaints from anybody. Everybody's been willing to help each other, adapt, and help me and my staff as well, because the work that they're helping us do is taking pressure off of us, and then that way we can focus and be more accurate and more diligent on our own processes. So thank you all for helping do that. But as of now, I've only got one person. It was one Republican. If the Republican board members would sign for me, I will get out of your hair and let this gentleman go to. It's just an addition. We had a dropout, so we just wanted to keep the teams balanced. So that was all.
I want to echo Mr. Tate's thanks to the two parties that have worked so hard to make this work smoothly. Thank you.
And Ms. Wright, like I said, we set harder criteria this go round for the time that we were asking of them, technological focus, because we wanted to be able to use our own portal to be able to input data, and that only helped us when we were trying to get these ballots out. So thank you all again.
Fantastic.
And with that, I will get out of your way.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Oh, that was a delightful agenda item. All right. Anyone have any questions, comments? Next item is.
Do we need a motion for that? We did the motion last time.
What would be I believe, the two board members we needed to sign the appointment.
I think it makes it more clear because it's the board,
Okay.
just,
Okay.
yeah, it's a whole board appointment.
I would entertain a motion.
We do have Glenn.
Okay, we'll wait for Glenn to come back. So help me with the language here. A motion to approve the amendment to the multi-partisan assistant team. Okay.
No, you don't need to say
Wait,
it.
does AK not like that?
Well, I guess it just depends on what it's,
Okay.
The addition?
yeah, I would say the addition or the appointment.
The replacement?
Yeah, the replacement appointment.
Gee, I thought amendment covered both ends of the transaction, but hey, you're the clerk. You make the call.
Wow,
What was the language?
Um,
Replacement?
Replacement appointment?
The-
I
The
Yes.
replacements, I remember the replacements. 80s band. Oh, and then, right, the football, the movie. All right, thanks, everybody. I would entertain a motion to approve the replacements that were the replacement that was recommended by staff. Ms. Stein, thank you. The motion before the board is to approve the MAT appointment that's recommended by staff. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Tate. Next up, early voting poll worker appointments. Ms. Ray. Ms. Duncan.
Oh,
Ms. Duncan and Ms. Ray.
so I can get things started just with the overview. So at our last meeting, we were presented a list. The process has, as we have alluded to earlier in this meeting, the process of appointing poll workers has improved over time, which has been fantastic. We've had a lot more communication about it. We've gotten names earlier. We've gotten names at all. I think that it takes a long time to make a poll worker base, and that's happening. So that is fantastic. We also had some law changes this year. So early voting workers were not appointed in the past. They are now. So that's what we're doing at this meeting. So we will have the early voting, just so that we're clear on what we're doing. We have early voting appointments now, and then and training starts on Monday. And then we will have election day appointments have already been made. So next time those would be around would be only if there are changes, if there are dropouts and things and that always happens. That's 600 people. So there's going to be changes in there. So you'll see that again, but that's not where we are now. We're doing early voting now. But Justin was saying earlier about the participation with the parties has been wonderful, and so we're really happy that continues. And Karen's going to give stats. We talked about those in the last board meeting too, about those increasing the kind of the parity, getting closer over time. We're not there yet, but we will get there. All right.
Okay.
Karen.
Let me go ahead and pass these out, everybody. This
Thank
is this version, new improved. So there are not very many changes from the list that you looked at the last time. We had a total of 5 workers that have dropped out for various reasons, and they've been replaced by people who were either on the backup list originally or were recently added. I had some people who were nominated by the Republican Party, and since we needed to find a few more workers in many of the early voting sites, those people were put into work, and then we also have 3 new people added to the backup list. Well, because I don't know if it's okay for me to go through and mention names, I can sort of give you a rundown of the location. There are no changes at all to the captains. None of the captains have changed. There are no changes to Black Mountain Library. There is 1 change to the Beetree Fire Department afternoon shift. There are no changes to East Asheville, no changes to Enka Candler, and no changes to the Friendship Center. So sort of moving right along now to Fairview Library, there's a change to the morning shift worker. There are no changes to Leicester Community Center, no changes to the Asheville Library, And then South Buncombe Library, there is a change in the morning shift. And there is a change in UNCA afternoon shift. No changes to Upper Hominy Valley and no changes to West Asheville Library. And then, as I mentioned, there are 3 new people who appear on the backup worker list who were not on the list before. There's one person's name on your backup list that is sort of shaded and italicized. That's because that person has not completed the paperwork at Sphurion, and the background check has not been completed on that person.
And that individual's aware of
They're aware,
deficiency?
and
Okay.
also the party's aware, and I think
Good,
that they've
okay.
been working hard to try to reach that person and encourage them
Good.
to complete the process
Very good.
and get through.
I need everybody ready.
You said there were 5 changes,
There are 3 changes to the backup list, yes.
and then for
And then
the,
there are 5 people who changed on the actual assignments.
I've just got 3.
Do you want me to point them out to you?
Yeah.
Is that easier?
I'm up to Upper Hominy, there was no change
There
there.
was no change. This is a change from Beetree Fire Department.
No, I got that one. I'm up to
Okay.
Wesley Grant, Weaverville.
Fairview is a change.
Yeah.
South Buncombe Library.
Oh, okay. And West Asheville had 2 changes.
And
looks like.
UNCA.
Okay. 2 changes in West Asheville.
No.
Just
No.
one.
That one was the same, yeah. And that's the changes on the backup list.
Okay.
Do you want me to do the same to
What,
you?
how do we know who on this list are party judges?
We are considering them all party judges, so we're not just differentiating between a party judge and an assistant. They will all do the same training. They will all be ready to serve if needed, so.
So we don't know who's actually gonna be assigned to those positions.
Well, the statute allows for you to have multiple party judges because of the shift system, and so on a given day, we don't know exactly who the workers are because, of course, since they work for 14 days out of a 17-day period, you do have people that can't work on a particular Tuesday, a particular Saturday, and so it would be up to the Board of Elections to look and see who's working on that particular day if a challenge arises. It's only when a challenge comes up. If a challenge comes up on photo ID, then we would need to designate 2 people as judges. Obviously, they would need to be registered party people. And in many cases, that will be fairly obvious because there's only one person that could fill that role. If there's more than one, then we would look at who's got the most experience and appoint that person to be the party judge on a particular issue. They will all do the same training, though.
I do have one question. In reviewing the statute that was listed on our agenda, it mirrors the statute for election day. And that statute specifically states that if you're given names from the parties, that they're to be appointed before someone that's not of a party. So if you've been
Correct.
given names by the party, why do we still have unaffiliated captains?
I've used every person that was given to me by the party.
Every person?
Yes. Every person that was given to me is either working, is on the backup list, or they decided not to work.
Well, if they're on the backup list, why wouldn't they have been appointed rather than being backup?
We actually need some people on the backup list to cover if somebody's sick and we don't have a person of that particular party working that day. We need to put somebody in that slot. So we always want to have people on the backup list from both parties.
Right.
So we have a minimum number who will step in to cover if we need to. We don't want to have a precinct, an early voting site that because of illness doesn't have somebody from a particular party on a given day.
Yeah, that is a great nuanced question.
Well,
Yes.
the other question would be, when we look at the list, we see that there are people from parties that are in these locations, why aren't they listed as captains as opposed to an unaffiliated?
I think that the captains were people who have worked before. We did not feel with an important big election that we wanted to have people taking that very important role who have not worked in the past. So they are all veterans.
Right, good.
Well, I do understand that, but the statute doesn't really allow for that. I mean, it doesn't have that particular, it says that anyone that of other registered voters can be used after the two parties are represented.
Well, the parties are represented, are they not?
The two parties are represented.
They are
yeah.
represented,
So-
and I think the focus has been on using the most experienced election workers because they've proven that they can make this process hum for us. One of the great things about having so many people work in early voting this time is that many more people will gain the experience. But in order for an early voting site to run smoothly, I mean, heck, you've been an election official. You want someone who really knows their stuff. If you have someone come in and it's their first assignment as a chief judge, there's a lot of risk associated with that.
Yeah, the experience is very important in that key position. Obviously, new people can learn the ropes as they go. But if you're having somebody that manages that precinct, I think you want somebody that knows what they're doing and they've done this job before. So we did particularly want people with experience. The other factor that is important to keep in mind is it's actually quite hard to get people to do that job. A lot of people do not like to have that kind of responsibility, and they tell me, no, I'm happy to work, I want to work, but I do not want to have that hat to wear. So in most cases, I think it's hard to get people to say, I'll be a chief judge.
I had a question about challenges, and I can't remember if this is in the back of my head from the statute or something I heard at a meeting. But for challenges, they have to be held at the early voting site. You
Correct.
can't have you can't have a set of judges at the office to hear challenges, correct?
Correct. It's held there and then, and this is
But
for
can you
photo
have
ID.
them on election day? Can you have a set of judges to hear challenges at the office?
Well, we're here on election day.
Yeah,
The board's here on election day.
right. But you have to have them done at the early voting site.
Yes.
All voter challenges are done at the voting location. And, we always come to this topic, and we should, because it's a situation that could arise, but it has not in years and years and years. We have not had a challenge at a voting site. But we make sure that we have that training. But I just wanted some context for that.
Mr. Aceto.
I want to thank Mary Ann, because she's trying to do the devotional reading from the book. And at the same time, our practice of trying to put the experienced people in place is great, and it's innovative. I don't think other counties do. So, and it kind of makes my hair hurt if I don't think about it too much. But I think we always need to hear this. What does it say? And the way I have reconciled this personally is that we count on the parties to express their concerns and be a part of the decision-making process to the extent that they have their opportunity for input and they give us input. If there has been no objection to this from the party, then I'll approve it. I'm good with it. If the parties are either uninformed or unconvinced, then I think I'd want to hear from them about that. But I'm getting that your process has incorporated the input of the parties most aggressively, and that they have responded. And you telling me that gives me the confidence I need. But that being said, I can't entirely reconcile, our good intentions with something that's where the statute is pretty clear. I think we have to say we're going with the spirit of the law, and that if the parties have an objection, then we need to know that from them. But it sounds like they've gotten input, they've had a chance to participate, and we are defaulting to experienced people. This gets a little weirder once we get, as there's more and more unaffiliated. That's where somebody could be hiding the ball, and we wouldn't know it. We have to count on the parties. That's why they need the information timely, and Mary Ann's been worrying that bone, and she should.
Well,
Okay, there's one other thing that we do rely on, and I think it's a critical component, and that is the feedback from our election workers that our staff receives. After every election, our staff takes a look at how things went, where did things work well, where do things need some improvement. And a huge piece of that review is the human resources that we deploy across the early voting sites and the election day sites.
Ms. Ray, let me ask you something, because the numbered memo 2023-07 addresses this. The parties can recommend individuals to fill the roles of chief judge and judges. And the staff, you and the rest of the people here, have the discretion to appoint whoever you want to among those different positions. So if you think there's an unaffiliated voter who's better for the captain position than anybody else who's been recommended by the parties, you have the discretion to do that, correct?
I would have to take a look at the number memo, but I do know that it said you can.
Well, that doesn't
statute.
that doesn't address it. It just talks
I
about
have
recommending.
At some point, numbered memos can break down.
Well, I mean, that's
No,
what.
I have the numbered memo, and I know which line you're referring to, so, in fact, the county board, rather than staff, I think, is the way I'm reading it. The county board is not required to accept these recommendations. The board is obligated to select from the list, provided the nominees are qualified and the list was timely provided. So it is up to the board to look at the list that was provided by me, by the two parties, and to decide if those recommendations, if those people are qualified. Yes, the list was timely provided, so we meet that. If these people are qualified, the only way we know if they're qualified is if they've worked before, and we can.
And then the numbered memo goes on to cite General Statute 163-166.35, subsection A1.
So I do see that you have discretion
You have
on
the
board.
discretion
Yeah.
to pick among the people that you have to accept, if they meet the standard for good conduct and all that, to say, you go work as a captain, you go work as a chief judge, you go work as an assistant, you work these hours, you work those hours. That's your call, or
Your call.
well, yeah, I mean, the board's call or the staff's call.
We get the recommendation from staff that is informed by the experience we've had with each of these individuals. And we ask staff about those recommendations, should we have any questions? And then we just decide on how to dispose of the staff recommendation. Director Duncan.
I don't want to necessarily put anyone on the spot right now, but we do have representatives from both parties here. If you wanted to hear, you maybe could ask their if that's something that would help. There are two people who maybe would be willing to talk about their interaction with us and, how.
Mr. Brown's not here, but Mr. Holland is. and I see Ms. Klein here. So, I mean, we do have two individuals from each of the major parties who worked a whole lot on this.
Well,
And,
we should also recognize Jennifer King, because she also did a lot of work on
Thank you, Ms. King.
putting forward names to
Thank you, thank you. It takes many hands. And, I mean, it's really great to see so much effort put into this these days.
Yeah, it is a huge job. I mean, just imagine trying to fill, how many is it, 600?
More than 600 if we're counting
Sure,
election day.
election day.
Yeah.
Well, you
I
got
think
80 precincts, at least, what,
Mr.
5 people in
Holland
each, that's
Yes.
400 there. What do you say, Mr. Holland?
Well, I appreciate, I'll be brief, the opportunity to say just a couple things, and appreciate working with Karen on this a lot. My understanding is there is a specific statute that talks about assistants and how those are appointed directly as well, with the idea of having parity. So what I've talked with Karen about is that the names that we've submitted to be able to get those in. I understand there's a deadline, it's a tight timeline for training, but that if we can get as many in early as we can, that's great, but that we do have a deadline, statutory deadline, to be able to get people in by. So my reading of it is that we should be able to continue, if we have a few more good candidates, to be able to get those in up until the statutory deadline. The conundrum, as I've discussed with Karen, is that you've got a number of unaffiliated people that are wanting to do this, and you need to get them trained. You've got timing things, you've got budget concerns as well. So that's above my pay grade in terms of how that all balances out, but we would like to get as close to parity as possible, and by being able to continue to have at least a few more individuals up until that statutory deadline would be helpful.
May I just say something? Because I
Please.
think Mr. Holland's talking about election day.
Exactly. You're not talking about the early
Because
voting.
early voting
Yes,
deadline
yes,
has
I'm
passed.
sorry, in terms of clarity, that's all, everything I said was election day.
Right, because there ain't no assistants during early voting. We just heard they're all judges. So-
Do we want to hear from
I'll say just a few things. I know that I worked really closely all last year with Karen on recruiting people, interviewing people, convincing people to work,
Good job.
looking into all of their skill sets. If they were already experienced and they were unaffiliated. I had long conversations with Karen about their suitability. I am very pleased, pardon me, with the process. I really appreciate your process as a team to help us find the right people for the right positions. If they don't have COVID, I'm sorry I'm coughing.
No,
I had it weeks
you're
ago.
over COVID.
I'm over COVID, but I really do appreciate the process very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Thank you, Mr. Holland. Really do appreciate your participation in this. I've been doing this for a while, and what you have accomplished is nothing short of miraculous compared to where we were not very long ago. Thank you. Hey, well done.
I would only have one other question, and that is, what is our plan, at least, that we would begin to move people that are gaining experience into these captain positions, into the judge positions, where they're not all judges? Because as the statute reads, we should be trying to get parity.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of this session, I think we'll be able to review how we would like to do this for 2026. I think this process started as this in March. We had already begun recruiting when the statute changed. So it was a little difficult this year to move people aside who have been working for many, many years, both Republican, Democrat, and some unaffiliated workers. They all expect to be asked back. They
Right.
have made themselves available. They have contacted me. I think this was a transition year for us to try to feed in more of the party input, but also recognize people that have long been working for us. I think we've got a good gap coming up with 2025. We can really hone down how we want this process to work better in 2026, and hopefully we can get more closer to the parity that we've been looking for. Certainly people that work this election. We'll get feedback on them from the captains,
Right.
we'll get feedback from the rovers, and people that obviously have the potential to be a captain, to be a chief judge in the future will be flagged. And we will be, looking at them and asking them if they're willing to do that in the future. So I know that when I've been working with Mr. Holland, that's been one of the conversations that we've been having, that there are certain people who have done really well, and I encourage him to put the names forward as a party judge.
Right.
Likewise, there are people that I say perhaps they should be an assistant rather than a judge.
Right,
So.
and that is a healthy process. Feedback loop is what keeps everybody fresh.
Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Acito.
I asked this question with great fear and trepidation. What,
But he asked it anyway.
as we're talking about flagging people, we're talking about identifying them, we're talking about distinguishing one candidate from another, what sort of, if someone were to ask you for the record of this, where's my record? Where does it say what my, what my evaluations were, what my, and how would you answer that? It could be a request for information, which is what did you, what is there, or it could be a request for a document, which is, I want to see the piece of paper where it says that. How are you lying awake tonight wondering about that? Have you got something going?
I'm not.
Because I kind of am.
We have had a conversation with Attorney Kurt Euler, and he has assured us that that kind of information is confidential. That comes under personnel, and that is not part of a records request. So, a person's confidential employment file, you might say. So.
Not from the public, and certainly, but as far if a person, but that's very helpful that we recognize these as personnel decisions. They still could come up in a what do we call it? Restricted session. What's the word?
Records request?
No, where we would consider something and exclude public.
Closed session.
Closed session.
Thank you very much.
Executive.
I didn't know where
It's
it's
early
going.
onset, whatever it is. So, I forgot, but, so, and we've talked about this before, it's like, where does this kind of information live? And how do you, when it's appropriate to recover it, how do you do it? What does it look like? We talked about creating, records on a precinct basis, we've been bouncing this around.
Yeah, and we
for
don't
the
do
last
that.
4 years.
This is a space where I think it makes a whole lot of sense to rely on staff to get the feedback, put together information to help us prepare for the next election. But I don't feel the need for the board to see that. And I'm happy to discuss it. I feel very comfortable having delegated this to staff, and would feel uncomfortable if we were.
I'm not sure I want to open that box.
Yeah.
It's just, but I would simply want to know that staff know from us that they should be comfortable with whatever they have arrived at, knowing that, the question may be asked of them someday, and it may be, and it may penetrate the whole confidentiality. It may go to the essence of what's in there, and there are lots of scenarios where whatever something is recorded by a particular employee suddenly becomes an issue, and so you as staff just need to be aware that you've got some semblance of awareness of that. If it comes up, that you would be comfortable with what you would be asked to present, and that we could in turn discern what you were thinking from what's down there. And then it is what it is. It's just, that, but that goes back to what I talked about, is thinking about when I create a record, or when I create information, where is it going to end up? you know, how is it gonna be retained? Who's gonna ask for it? In what form am I gonna be required to deliver it? And, you know, we as a board really can't answer that and to tell you what to do.
Yeah,
In that would really not be,
right.
it would be a dumb idea.
Amen.
But that
Amen.
doesn't mean that you aren't in a position where, you know, at some point, that question is gonna get asked. And have you thought about, how would I answer it? What would I show? What would I present? Would it be sufficient to show what I was thinking? You know, would it reveal things that are appropriate, even if they may be unflattering? You know, that's, you know, what form is this taking?
Well,
And that happens, you know, here we got a labor lawyer right here. And he's strangely quiet. You know, he made a whole career out of this.
Kurt Euler's given us the directive, we can't look at it.
Right. I do believe that there are instances where we have election workers who do receive feedback from election services staff about maybe you want to try something different or right. And I don't want to have anything to do with that. Staff does that supervision. I just don't see the board having a role in that.
I was
Make the
curious about one
appointments,
thing.
yes, but not supervise.
I mean, I assume that these people are considered employees for whom the confidentiality of personnel records would apply, but even election workers are considered county employees to which the privacy rights of the personnel law apply.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
because of how elections law is structured.
And even the seasonal employees, the
Even
ones,
though they're contract.
the
you know,
contract
Technically,
employees,
we contract through Spherion.
and they're covered by that confidentiality provision. Okay. So essentially, everybody's covered by it, it sounds like. Okay.
That doesn't mean it's not subject to discovery at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I just keep it all in here, so.
That's where it
Very
is.
smart woman.
There are times when that is absolutely the right thing to do.
That's the truth.
But these are good, great points. Like, we should always be thinking about things and how we improve, and we've kind of touched on some things about how this early voting appointment process is new. We learned a lot this year. One thing that Karen and I have discussed is having this meeting earlier, so it's not so close to the training deadline. So there's things that we learned and things that we can improve. We'll continue to talk with the parties about how we can do things next time, drawing out the timeline, all of that. So we'll keep marching forward. But I'm very happy with the progress that was made in such a short amount of time.
Amen. Thank you. Anyone have any more questions? Ms. Ray?
Thanks very much.
Ms. Ray, thank you for your outstanding work. Appreciate it. Yeah. I'll do it. I move that Blount County Board of Elections approve the list of early voting election officials that was proposed by staff. Any discussion? All right, the motion before the board is to approve the list of early voting poll worker appointments that was recommended by staff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Yeah, we just need one of them. Do you have one that?
I'm sorry, I wrote a date on this one, so.
Well, I like having a date on this.
I like keeping this for my records.
Yes, you can do that. Oh, I have it, thank you.
All righty, and that is making the circuit around the board table. The next thing is a board schedule update. But we'll wait for everybody to put their signature on this before we get into the nitty-gritty of this calendar. My goodness. Director Duncan.
Okay, so we are getting close here. Second to last agenda item. So this is the board schedule update. So this is pertaining to the board meeting schedule. So by statute, we need the board to approve that schedule, and then we will notice it. This board has done a fantastic job of really being ahead of this. So we started doing this planning last year. But of course, there have been law changes, and so AK is going to go over what those are. It's mostly pertaining to Election Day and Canvas. There's a few changes in there. And then requesting that you remember that things might happen after Canvas, and so hoping that you will clear your schedules for that. Presidential elections tend to have a lot in them, so just kind of also some reminders.
Yes.
So AK has the drafts in front of you. They have draft on them. She'll go over what those changes are, and then we can answer any questions. If you like how it is, then we can approve it and get that noticed. My microphone is not stretching as far as I thought it would, so I'm gonna back and let AK take over.
Hello. Okay, so the draft that you have in front of you, I'm just going to go over the changes that I made from the last time that y'all approved it, which was basically for the second primary. So I deleted all the meetings that have already happened. That's the first thing that I did. And then I just changed the proposed, the agenda items for today, but this meeting will be done in a little bit, so that's happened. The other changes that I made, a lot of them you will recognize because we made those changes in the primary and or the second primary from those law changes. We just didn't want to go ahead and change them here in case we found out things worked, tweak things that we found out worked or didn't work in the second primary or the first primary. So on Election Day, we have moved the meeting to 5 p.m. On the old draft, it was at 2 p.m. We also deleted doing challenges on that day, and we have moved that to, I'll go over it a little bit more, but moved that to Friday, November 8th, and then added another challenge if needed meeting day on Tuesday, November 12th. And I'll go over that more in a little bit. The additional thing that was changed on Election Day was clarifying the close of early voting polls happening at 7:30, because when we first originally made the schedule, we were able to close those during the day, which is also why the meeting was at 2 as opposed to now, because we can't get as much of that stuff done. We'll just start at 5. That is, I believe, most of Election Day. So going on to that Friday, November 8th day. So originally the meeting we had scheduled at 5:30. That was when we were still allowed to accept absentee ballots up until 5 p.m. on that Friday. So we had the meeting after in order to get as many of those. Since that is now Election Day, we have moved that meeting up to 3:30, which is something that we didn't do in the first primary, and I felt everybody was sad about. But we were able to do in the second primary, and I think that worked well. We also added, like I said, so that would be a meeting for supplemental list of absentee ballots, which was already on there, but adding the ballot challenges and then the review of provisional ID with exception forms. Both the ballot challenges and the review of provisionals with ID exception forms, we want to go ahead and do that day so we can get notices in the mail, because those people, if they want to protest it, can come on Canvas and do that. So that's why that's Friday afternoon. And then I added the Tuesday, November 12th, 3:30 p.m. meeting. That's ballot challenges if needed. So under the new law, which was with that Senate law or session law 2023-140, that the new deadline to do a ballot challenge is technically 5 p.m. that day, but we run those reports that morning. They won't change after that morning, and that's when we can find if there's anybody else that we need to challenge. So in that case, that would be like challenges because of deaths, that type of thing. So we would be checking basically whatever Devin checks. And then the last change that I made to the calendar is that I added that line that says, keep the rest of 2024 open in case of recounts, smiley face. Sorry. Specifically, I know at the conference, the board or the state board really emphasized keeping the week after open, but whenever I tried to get more information, they were kind of like, well, recounts can take a while, and we don't really know what those, what that would look like. And I think they've gone pretty far, like even into December, in some cases.
So don't plan to go on a skiing trip for Christmas?
You're okay at Christmas.
Yeah, hopefully,
Not for
not
Thanksgiving.
yeah, maybe not for things.
Now, the one revision I would suggest is you simply delete those smiley faces. I want the terrified face.
Well, I don't know how to make a terrified face in Word, but I do know how to make a smiley face in Word. And those are all of the changes that I made. Any other questions?
Thank you for the update. Oof,
Jake.
very sobering.
So you're gonna send us a non-draft copy, huh?
Yeah, well,
Once
assuming
we
you all
approve
make
it.
an motion and approve it, yes.
Mr. Elam.
Review and approve the schedule gonna be on the website?
Well, I don't typically upload this form just because there's not really a good place to put it, but I will make all those changes to the calendar that is on the website.
The scheduled board meeting.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can request this through the portal.
Yes, you could request it through the portal and then, yes. And then once one person does it, then it's real easy to find, but hopefully with our new and improved website, we'll have good places to
Hopefully. Yeah.
put it. .gov. Any other questions?
All right, anyone have any questions about this? I would entertain a motion to approve the
Wait, I do have an important
Oh,
question.
please, Ms. Stein.
What about the chocolate? Will there be chocolate available for us in those meetings?
Well, that has something to do with the schedule.
Yes, it
on the
does.
schedule.
If I'm gonna show or not.
It also has
She
something to
wants a
do with the
revision.
budget.
Yeah, that's true. That was a question from when Victoria was here. I'll see if I can add that to my budget line item. Chocolate for the board.
And just consider it a major contingency. It keeps things running smoothly.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Aceto. The motion before the board is to approve the revised calendar that takes us through the end of this year. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is next meeting date, which is an absentee ballot meeting. It is scheduled for Tuesday, October 1st at 3:30 p.m. Depending on when we put these things in the mail, we may have a lot of them, or we may have none. So just stay tuned, but I think we'll probably have a lot of them, knowing how swiftly our staff works. But remember, we can't put any absentee ballots in the mail until every single county is ready to do so. And we don't know when that's going to be.
Is Print-elect printing these?
So how it works for, are you asking for us specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's a reprint, and I thought we got our ballots from Print-elect.
Yes, so.
But on a reprint, I wasn't sure if that was true.
So for absentee by mail, we use ballot on demand.
Okay.
So we have to get that electronic file and then we can print them.
Okay.
So we print in-house for absentee by mail.
Okay.
And then we do order some pre-printed backup for early voting, just in case something happens. We have pre-printed for that.
And
We
where did that
did
come
place that order, Print-elect.
Print-elect, okay.
We did place that order, so we gotta redo that. But election day, that's all pre-printed. We hadn't placed that order, so we are good there.
Okay.
And again, we use so many people use the early voting opportunity, and we don't use the pre-printed ballots. We just
Yeah,
use
those
the
are just
express vote.
backups.
They'll be available as backups, right, but that's not what we tend to use. Mr. Black, did you have a question?
Yes, is the list of people who've requested
I don't think so, but why don't you tell us, Director Duncan?
I am afraid to say it, like, don't quote me on it, but I think that it's available on election day.
Right.
That it is clear, it is clearly written down somewhere.
Jan, I think the deal is that when you request one, that will not be publicly disclosed until you actually submit the absentee ballot. And then it's designated as returned or accepted or something like that. But I remember after the hubbub in Congressional District 9 some years back, steps were taken to really start to limit the amount of data that's put out about the absentee ballot process, because the feeling was that some folks were taking advantage of that in unfortunate ways.
I'm not sure about this, but I
Yeah.
was thinking that it wouldn't be published until that ballot was sent, not when it was requested, because once it was actually sent, but I'm not sure. It may be when
Well,
it's returned.
when it is sent, I know that it gets into the ballot tracks system, so the
Right.
voter can keep track of everything. But,
I'll have to look that one up. I'm not sure either.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
Mr. Black, if you'll come to the next meeting on
This is
October
how we
1st at
keep our-
3:30 p.m.
Our audience. Yeah,
We're-
it is.
We're going to have the definitive answer for you, sir.
Yeah.
But at least you would be able, after the ballot is returned and scanned, you would then have access to that information.
That's how I think it is. I think
Right.
it's when it's
Once it's in.
returned and accepted by the board, then that becomes public information.
Right.
And I think that that's what the absentee voter file on our website is, that keeps getting updated. But again, let's figure out what's for sure
What
and get it
exactly,
back.
right,
Yeah.
Thank you. Good question, obviously.
Is it a document or is it
All right. Board members, did you have any more questions or comments? First, patient audience, have you any questions or comments for the board? Thanks again for, Ms. Standard.
I'm Mary Standard from Lone Tree, and just thank you for all of your service and hard work. In my mind's eye, I wish everyone would have to serve on a board or a committee where they are subject to records requests. It changes everything about how you think and how you are required to act. Everybody should have that opportunity.
Yes.
And also
That
a
burden.
comment about the judge selection process is that one of the unintended consequences, and I haven't heard it discussed elsewhere, is when 4 of the municipalities within Buncombe County voted to, yes, and I'm prejudiced here, voted to give themselves an extra year in office and change their election dates to be in an even year, not an odd year. It's cut down on the number of elections that this board oversees.
True.
And it cuts down on the number of experience opportunities that potential poll workers have to get experience.
Yeah, that's
So
true,
it
too.
certainly has an unintended consequence that is resolving itself now in your.
Thank you. I have noted to assorted powers that be that when those 4 municipalities had their elections changed, we missed a marvelous opportunity to get election workers trained in a low-key municipal election environment where they would learn the processes, our systems, and then they'd be ready for those even-numbered year elections. I actually brought that up at this year's Buncombe County Democratic Party Convention and was very shot down. I mean, they had a campaign organized on that one. And I'm going to try it again. But, yeah, there just doesn't seem to be much interest in going back to the odd-numbered years in a lot of quarters. But I love Weaverville and Woodfin. And Woodfin Water and Sewer. All 3 entities are odd-numbered years. Well, thank you, everyone, for sticking around until 6 o'clock. If there's no more business to come before this board today, and it doesn't seem there is any, meeting adjourned.